This is a true crime story. It includes some disturbing content. Viewer discretion is advised. In 1947, a young woman was found dead in Los Angeles. Her body had been cut. The crime scene shocked the nation. The victim was Elizabeth Short, later known as the Black Dahlia. Who was she? Why was she murdered? And how could such a brutal case remain unsolved for over 75 years? In this episode, we'll explore the mystery, the suspects, the evidence, and the dark truths hiding behind the headlines. This is not just a story about death. It's about a woman who wanted to be remembered. And now, she is. Elizabeth Short was born on July 29, 1924. She lived in a small town called Hyde Park near Boston, Massachusetts. She was the third of 5 sisters. Her father worked in building miniature golf courses. But when the Great Depression hit, his business failed. Then, one day, he disappeared. He left his car near a bridge and vanished. Many thought he had jumped into the river. But later, they found out he was alive. He had just left. Elizabeth's mother, Phoebe, had to raise 5 daughters alone. The family struggled with money. Elizabeth had asthma and lung problems, so she often visited Florida for her health. But even through difficult times, she dreamed of something bigger. Elizabeth loved movies. She wanted to be a film actress, like the stars she saw on screen. In her late teens, she moved to California. She lived with friends, boyfriends, and sometimes with strangers. She moved from city to city, Santa Barbara, San Diego, Los Angeles. She often wore black dresses, had jet black hair, and painted her lips bright red. People noticed her. She had a striking look. Some said she was quiet and shy. Others said she was lively and fun. She worked at diners, theaters, and sometimes posed for photos. She met many men, some rich, some in the army. She often told people that she was going to be in the movies, but she never got her big break. Still, she smiled. Still, she hoped. Where did the name come from? Black Dahlia. There was a movie at the time called The Blue Dahlia, and Elizabeth wore black often. She was beautiful, mysterious, so the press gave her that nickname after her death. But while she was alive, no one called her that. To her friends, she was just Beth. She was 22 years old. She liked jazz clubs, window shopping, and writing letters to her family. She kept her secrets close. No one really knew everything about her. In early January 1947, Elizabeth was staying in San Diego. She told people she was going back to Los Angeles. On January 9th, she was last seen at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown LA. She said she was waiting for her sister. No one saw her again after that. Where did she go? Who was she with? Nobody knows for sure. But 6 days later, the city would be shocked by a discovery so brutal, so strange, that it would become one of the most famous unsolved murders in American history. January 15th, 1947. It was a cold Wednesday morning in Los Angeles. The city was calm. The sun was just rising. A woman named Betty Bersinger was walking with her 3-year-old daughter. They were in Leimert Park, a quiet neighborhood. Betty looked around. The area was empty, just houses, trees, and an empty lot. Suddenly, something caught her eye. At first, she thought it was a broken mannequin, a white, smooth figure lying in the grass. But as she got closer, she realized the truth. It wasn't a mannequin. It was a woman's body, naked, pale, cut in half. She screamed. She ran to a nearby house and called the police. Within minutes, detectives arrived at the scene. The body was carefully placed. It was not hidden. It was out in the open, just a few feet from the sidewalk. It was like someone wanted it to be found. The body had been sliced in two at the waist. There was no blood, not a drop. That meant the woman had been killed somewhere else and cleaned. Then her body was brought here. Her arms were raised over her head. Her legs were wide apart, and her face was cut. Each side of her mouth had been sliced up toward the ears. A deep, terrible smile. What police would later call a Glasgow smile. There were bruises on her body. There were cuts on her breasts and thighs. Her body had been washed with gasoline. The killer had taken time. It was not quick. It was not random. Detectives looked for evidence. They found a heel print and tire marks nearby. They took photos, but there were no clothes, no purse, no ID. Reporters arrived fast. News traveled quickly. This was one of the most disturbing crime scenes Los Angeles had ever seen. Photographers snapped pictures. One photo would appear on the front page of every newspaper the next morning. The autopsy was done the same day. The coroner confirmed what the police feared. The woman had been tortured. She was hit on the head. That was the cause of death. But she was also cut, beaten, and mutilated before and after death. She had been dead for about 10 hours. That meant she was killed sometime late at night on January 14th. Inside the morgue, they took her fingerprints. And then came the breakthrough. Just 56 minutes later, the FBI called back. They had a match. Her name was Elizabeth Short. In 1943, she had been arrested for underage drinking in Santa Barbara. Because of that, her fingerprints were in the system. Elizabeth Short, 22 years old, from Massachusetts, aspiring actress. Now the victim of one of the most horrific murders in Los Angeles history. The press gave her a name, the Black Dahlia. It would become more famous than her real name. The public was shocked. People couldn't stop talking about the case. Who was the killer? Why was she killed like this? Was it personal? Was it revenge? Was it the work of a psychopath? Detectives had many questions. They started talking to her friends, roommates, ex-boyfriends. They checked hotels, buses, phone calls. They discovered that Elizabeth had stayed at several places in the days before her death. She had little money. She borrowed things. She stayed with people she barely knew. She was seen at the Biltmore Hotel on January 9th, the last day anyone saw her alive. After that, she disappeared. Some people said they saw her downtown. Others said she was with a man, but nothing was confirmed. 1 week later, her body was found. The media turned the case into a sensation. They called Elizabeth a party girl. They said she was secretive, flirtatious, or even dangerous. But her friends said that wasn't true. They said she was kind. She was lonely. She just wanted to be famous. While the city talked and speculated, the police worked day and night. But the case was already getting harder. The crime scene had been contaminated by reporters and onlookers. Valuable clues were lost. There were no cameras nearby. No witnesses. The killer had planned well. He or she knew what they were doing. They wanted attention, but not to be caught. As days passed, more letters came to the police and newspapers. Some included cut-out letters from magazines. Some included Elizabeth's belongings, her birth certificate, photos, even her address book. The killer was playing a game. But who was the killer? And why did they do this? That's what the police were trying to find out. And that's where we go next. The murder of Elizabeth Short shocked Los Angeles. Police knew they had a difficult case. There was no clear suspect, no murder weapon, no witnesses. Just a young woman, cut in half, and left on display. Still, detectives had to begin somewhere. They started with forensics. At the crime scene, they collected dirt samples, shoe prints, and tire marks. But most of the evidence was contaminated. Newspaper reporters and curious people had walked through the area. Some had even touched the body before police arrived. Next, the autopsy report gave more information. Elizabeth died from blows to the head, most likely from a blunt object. Her body had been completely drained of blood. This told the medical team something important. She was killed elsewhere, then moved. Also, the cuts made to her body were very precise. The killer knew what they were doing. Maybe they were a doctor or a surgeon, someone with experience. Meanwhile, the press was going wild. They wrote dramatic headlines like, "Hollywood's Black Dahlia slain in cold blood," or "Actress carved like a doll." Some reports called her a call girl or a prostitute without any proof. This made the case harder for police. People focused more on gossip than on facts. Still, the investigation continued. Police traced Elizabeth's last known steps. She was last seen at the Biltmore Hotel on January 9th. She told hotel staff she was meeting her sister, but her sister never came. Several people claimed they saw Elizabeth after January 9th. One said she was sitting in a nightclub. Another said she was with a man in a dark suit, but no sighting was confirmed. Detectives checked train stations, bus stops, hotels, and hospitals. They interviewed over 150 people in the first week. Old boyfriends, roommates, employers. No one had answers. Then something strange happened. On January 24th, a man sent a package to the Los Angeles Examiner, a major newspaper. The return address was made of cut-out letters from a magazine. Inside the envelope they found Elizabeth Short's birth certificate, her business cards, her social security card, and an address book with pages torn out. It was her real stuff. The police confirmed it. It had been cleaned with gasoline just like her body. Later that week, more letters came. Each was made of cut-out letters, like a ransom note. One said, "I must apologize for the delay in the Dahlia murder." The sender was mocking the police. He was playing games, or she was. Investigators believed the killer was watching the news. They believed he was proud. He wanted to be famous. And then came the false confessions. People began calling the police, saying, "I killed the Black Dahlia." Some walked into the station. Others wrote letters from prison. One man confessed, but police learned he was in New York the whole time. Another was mentally ill and had confessed to many crimes before. In total, over 60 people confessed in the first year. By now, more than 500 people have claimed to be the killer. None of them matched the facts. Detectives created a list of suspects. Some were friends of Elizabeth. Others were men who had dated her. Some were strangers who seemed suspicious. But one name stood out: Dr. George Hodel. He was a wealthy doctor who lived in Los Angeles. He had a large house, threw strange parties, and knew many artists and actors. He had medical training. He also had a dark past. But back in 1947, police didn't focus on him yet. They didn't have enough evidence, so they kept digging. They found that Elizabeth had often stayed with strangers. She had no home of her own. She lived from place to place, depending on favors. She had few belongings and little money. Sometimes she didn't eat for days. Still, she kept up appearances. She dressed well, spoke politely, and smiled often. To the world, she looked confident. But inside, she may have felt lost. Detectives believed the killer knew her. This wasn't random. It was too clean, too cruel. But who could do this, and why? Weeks passed, then months. Leads grew cold. Suspects were released, evidence was lost, and the killer vanished. The case became a mystery, not just a murder. Soon, the Black Dahlia story became a part of American culture. Movies, books, and rumors began to spread. But no answers. The police still had a few clues. The style of the cuts, the letters sent to the press, the use of gasoline, the body placement, but nothing connected to a single person. Was the killer someone smart enough to avoid capture? Was it someone inside the city's elite class? Or was it someone completely unknown? The LAPD kept the case open. FBI files were created. But slowly, the trail went cold. Still, one suspect would return years later, George Hodel. And his story was darker than anyone imagined. We'll look at him next. The Black Dahlia case had many suspects, but one man stood out. His name was Dr. George Hill Hodel. He was smart, rich. He had a large home in Los Angeles. He was a trained surgeon, and he had a dark past. George Hodel was born in 1907. He studied medicine and became a doctor. He was interested in art, psychology, and sex. He read strange books and had unusual ideas. He called himself a modern thinker. He lived in a famous house called the Souden House. It looked like a Mayan temple. It had hidden rooms, secret hallways, and strange decorations. Some people said it felt creepy. The house was often full of guests. Writers, painters, actors, dancers. There were wild parties, loud music, and alcohol, and sometimes worse. Hodel was known to have many lovers. Some were very young. He was also abusive. His own daughter said he hurt her. In 1949, he was accused of sexually abusing his 14-year-old daughter, Tamar. She testified against him in court, but he was found not guilty. Still, the police were now watching him. In 1950, the LAPD decided to take action. They placed secret microphones inside his house. For 40 days, they listened. They heard strange things, conversations, arguments, screams, and one line caught their attention. Hodel said, "Supposin' I did kill the Black Dahlia. They couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore. She's dead." That was enough. Police searched his house, but they didn't find a body. They didn't find a murder weapon. So they let him go. Shortly after, Hodel left the country. He moved to the Philippines. He stayed there for many years. He returned to the U.S. in the 1990s and died in 1999. At the time, most people forgot about him. But one person didn't. His son, Steve Hodel. Steve was a former LAPD detective. After his father died, Steve began looking into his past. He found photos, letters, and medical records. He found documents about the Black Dahlia case. He found a photo of a woman who looked like Elizabeth Short. Steve began to believe something shocking. His father was the killer. In 2003, Steve wrote a book called Black Dahlia Avenger. In it, he explained why he believed his father murdered Elizabeth. He had several points. His father was a skilled surgeon. The precise cuts on Elizabeth's body matched surgical techniques. His father had known people in the LA police and may have been protected. The handwriting in the Dahlia letters looked like his father's. His father made strange comments caught on the secret tapes. The body may have been placed near his house. Steve also believed his father killed other women. He connected his father to other unsolved crimes from the 1940s. Not everyone agreed. Some said Steve's theory was just that, a theory. They said the evidence wasn't strong enough. No fingerprints, no DNA, no photos of the murder. But many people found it convincing. His book became a bestseller. Documentaries were made. Interviews were aired. Steve didn't stop. He wrote more books. He kept looking for proof. In 2013, cadaver dogs, dogs trained to smell human remains, searched the Sowden house. They signaled something under the ground in the yard. Soil samples were taken. They tested positive for human decomposition. But again, there were no bodies, no names, no proof of murder. To this day, George Hodel remains the most likely suspect in the Black Dahlia case. But no court ever charged him. He was never arrested. Some say he was protected. He knew powerful people. He had money. He had secrets. Others say it was all coincidence, that Steve Hodel only saw what he wanted to see, that he turned grief into obsession. Still, the story is hard to ignore. A young woman, a brutal murder, a brilliant but twisted doctor, and a son searching for the truth. If George Hodel really did kill Elizabeth Short, then justice was never served. And if he didn't, the real killer still remains unknown. But why would someone do this? Why was Elizabeth targeted? Was it personal, or was it planned? In the next and final part of this story, we will look at the biggest question. Why was the case never solved? The Black Dahlia case is one of the most famous unsolved murders in American history. More than 75 years have passed, and still there are no final answers. Why? Let's explore the reasons. First, the crime scene was badly contaminated. Reporters arrived before the police. They walked through the area. They took pictures. Some even moved parts of the body to get better shots. That means important evidence may have been lost forever. Shoe prints, blood traces, fingerprints all could have been destroyed. Second, the police made mistakes. They had too many suspects, over 150 in the first weeks. They chased false leads and listened to fake confessions. They didn't focus. They didn't protect the integrity of the case. Also, this was 1947. There was no DNA testing, no security cameras, no digital records. Everything was slower, harder, and easier to hide. Third, Elizabeth's lifestyle made the case harder. She moved often. She didn't have one job or one home. She met many new people, often strangers. This made it difficult to track her last days. Some officers judged her. They thought she asked for trouble. This unfair thinking made them treat the case less seriously at times. Next, the killer was careful. He cleaned the body. He used gasoline to remove fingerprints. He arranged the body like a message. He mailed her things to the newspaper. This was a planned crime, not an accident. The killer wanted attention, but not to be caught. He may have watched the police. He may have laughed while reading the headlines. Some believe the killer was protected, that he was part of the city's elite, that he had friends in the police. That's one reason why George Hodel became such a strong suspect. But even with all that, there was never a trial, never an arrest, never justice. Over the years, many theories appeared. Some said Elizabeth was killed by a jealous woman. Others said it was a group of people. Some believed it was a random act. Others were sure it was personal. Writers, filmmakers, and artists used the Black Dahlia story in books and movies. It became a legend. But behind the legend was a real person, a young woman with dreams, with fears, with family. Elizabeth Short was more than a body in the field. She was more than a mystery. She was a human being. And she deserved better. Her mother, Phoebe, never stopped hoping for answers. She lived many years after Elizabeth's death, waiting. But the truth never came. The LAPD kept the case open for decades. Today, it is technically still open. But there are no new leads and no active investigation. In 2013, the FBI released their files. They included interviews, photos, letters, but nothing led to a final name. In 2021, new technologies allowed old cases to be solved using genetic genealogy. Some people hoped the Dahlia case could be solved too. But so far, there has been no breakthrough. So why was this never solved? Because it was the perfect storm. A vulnerable victim, a cruel and careful killer, a chaotic investigation, and a city full of noise. The Black Dahlia case remains a symbol, a warning, a reminder that some stories don't have an ending. She dreamed of lights, cameras, fame, but not like this. Today, we remember her not as a headline, but as a person, someone who laughed, wrote letters, loved music, and tried to live her dream. Her case is still open, her story is still told, and somewhere the truth is still waiting. Thank you for joining us in telling it.